Sam just got the top 8 here with who? Who
With,
were you on?
I was on Aurora today. Yeah,
Aurora.
brand new.
Okay, so talk us through your deck list and what you think of the hero as far as Aurora is concerned.
So yeah, I'll just start with it. I got pretty standard starts for the reds, I feel like. So for the Elemental Runeblade cards, I have Arcanic Shockwave, 3 Entwined Lightnings, and then 3 Static Shocks. These are just kind of like your really solid lightning enders or extenders, or just really powerful 0 for 5s between the Static Shocks and the Arcanic Shockwave. And then for lightning attacks, I have obviously 3 Gauntlet Flash. The card's pretty good. 3 of the Flittering Charge, 3 Lightning Surge. These are all the lightning attacks I have in the main deck. And then for lightning instance, I have 3 of the Electrostatic Discharge, 3 Burn, Up, and Shock, which the card's just very insane. 3 Lightning Press, which is one of my favorite cards. And then 2 of the Electromagnetic Somersault. This card is so awesome with how flexible it is.
Why 2 instead of 3?
I was playing 3, but there was a really good point that I had heard that a lot of times when you have brick hands, you end up having them because this card is in your hand. So a lot of times you have this and no attacks and it just kind of does nothing, or you end up in kind of awkward hand situations with 1 attack. And so when I cut it down to 2, I was ending up with less situations of having 3 of them in my hand at one time. So you'll see in this deck, I have a number of 2-ofs throughout the deck. My general theory when I'm building decks is that if there's a card that I generally don't want to see 3 of in my hand in one go, I'll put it to 2. So that I will lower the odds of having 3 of them in my hand at one point. So that was kind of the thought on this card when I was cutting cards down. And then just for like generic attacks, I have Rabble, just a really good extender. It's not lightning, so that's the only reason why I have it at 2. And also, I just happen to be like one of the most unlucky people, or even though I'm playing 9 blues, I almost always hit a blue. Fortunately, today at the tournament, I only hit a blue 1 time and a yellow 1 time. And that was actually in my Verdance game in top 8. And then E-Strike, this card is just so good. Just like with Briar back in the day, you can really abuse embodiments and Arc Lightning and free go again to draw cards. And it's a 3 block, so it's just super solid all around. And then one of my favorite cards in the game is Snatch. Obviously, this card is just so good with causing threats up front, being able to have like reactions played on it with Lightning Press, and also getting buffed by Electrostatic Discharge. It just really presents really threatening on hits so that you can keep going wide or end your turn with Snatch.
You can do some crazy things with Electromagnetic Somersault with it as well.
Yeah, I've had games where I snatched someone 3 times in one turn because I'm just bouncing it back with the Electromagnetic Somersault. Yeah, and it gets so hard to block it out. I mean, this deck is just super annoying. It's just really hard to block it out if you're being optimally annoying. Then we have like the broken cards of the deck, which are the yellow. So there's Arc Lightning. This card is so crazy. I mean, so many games today, I just played like 2 of them at the same time, and I was just killing opponents with Arcane. It felt like Viserai. But it also gives your next action card go again. So it does present some challenging sequencing sometimes, where if you already have an embodiment of lightning, you kind of have to decide, do I want to gain the go again? Do I want the extra Arcane? So you kind of end up in interesting sequencing situations with this card. And then obviously CLV, Channel Lightning Valley. This card is one of the heaviest cards in the deck that carries you through a lot of your racing and extending plays. And it's just super annoying. I mean, with the weapon, it's so strong. I mean, I started so many of my turns just swinging Starstruck for 1. And obviously they're like, I'm not going to block it. And then you just play this and it becomes a snatch weapon. So not bad. I would say 3 of this card is pretty good. And then for my blues, 3 Blink. I really like this card. It plays really well with multiple aspects of the deck, in particular Gone in a Flash. This and Gone in a Flash is just a really good starter for your turn, so you can turn on Lightning, but also just kind of be able to recycle cards. This also does have a lot of implications with like Snatch and E-Strike too. Sometimes on bricky hands, you can open them up by having a Snatch, and your opponent thinks the turn's going to end, and then they let it hit, and then you blink, and then you're able to keep going. I've also used Blink against like Spinal Crushes, because even though Spinal Crush takes away go again, you can still get an action point. So I've played through Spinals with Blink too, which is pretty good.
Blink is so incredible now.
Yeah.
It's a card that from like Tales of Aria was just like this filler card that no one played, and now it's just absurd the things that that card can do.
I've seen people like not playing it or cutting it down, and I totally understand that, but the level of flexibility it gains you, because the deck also can just randomly, like with all the draw cards, you hit on a draw and then you draw a Blink. You're like, oh, my turn's just going to keep going. And then you can just keep extending. it's not a bad arsenal card. You know, it has a lot of flexibility where, I mean, you can even have it like you play blink turn 0 on their turn and then pitch to create embodiment of lightning. So it just has, it's like good enough. It does a lot of good interactions all around. Then I have Current Funnel. I call this Curtain Funeral because I couldn't read it, and that's just what I call it from now on. This card is really weird. It seems to just function as a lightning 3-block. That's really what it does. Yeah. I feel like a lot of times I never attack with it or actually utilize its ability because its ability is just inherent in the sword. A lot of times it's like I could play this or I could just swing sword and create an embodiment of lightning, and that's essentially this card anyway. So it has like a very strange design space where the card doesn't really want to be played more so than it wants to be used as a utility throughout the rest of the deck. So
yeah, it almost asks you to play cards like Sizzle, which are like non-attack action cards, so that you can grant it and the next thing go again. But if you're not playing that like you have here in your red counts, then it really does function as just a blue 3-block lightning card, right?
Yeah, and that's a good point. You'll start to see, like, definitely when we get to the equipment and my sideboard, how my list kind of deviates from some other people's ideas. Because, you know, I've been seeing like the Aether Ironweave Crown of Dominion lists. I've been seeing obviously like the Face Purgatory and Sizzles and all, and even like Nathan Crawford playing Spellbound Creepers and stuff. But I have shied away greatly from playing non-attack action cards, specifically because I just don't really believe in Face Purgatory. I really just like the card in Aurora. It feels too situational where like I need to have a non-attack and an attack, and it needs to be on an attack that I want to use it for Face Purgatory, and it needs to line up. And that's just a lot of ifs for me. So I decided to shy away from those cards and not play like Sizzle or Weave Lightning because it just makes the other things in my deck more streamlined. So, and then obviously the last blue is Sigil Lightning. I mean, this card is like, it's just pretty good. I mean, it just kind of does everything you want it to do. I've opened turn 0 with this card a lot throughout the tournament, and you know, then I get attacked, but it's kind of like it's the choices you make to try to kind of like extend your opener. But even this with like Flittering Charge or with Gone in a Flash can just really set you up well for an arsenal at the end of your turn, or to again extend. Like you'll hear like a lot of these cards are finishers or extenders, and they kind of double a lot of times depending on how they sit in your hand, which adds to a lot of like the choice making and the sequencing and the flexibility that the deck offers you. Like if you watched my game against the Azalea, you could really dynamically see how cards shifted from mid-range tools to aggro wide tools, where a lot of turns I was just going super tall, and then some turns I was just going super wide, but pretty much using like the same cards. So
what does your sideboard for this deck look like? Is this a clean 60?
No, so I'm a Yu-Gi-Oh player, so I sideboard down and then I sideboard up with my sideboard cards. So this is 52 cards, and when I deck build, I usually do that. Like I always end up being at 52, 54, and then I feel more comfortable adding cards. Sometimes I'll swap stuff out, but that's like my rule of thumb. So one of my favorite sideboard cards is Sigil, 2 Sigils of Solace. I really like this card. A lot of people aren't really playing it, as I can see, but it just duels as, again, an extender. So it works well with Gone in a Flash. It works well with Flittering Charge. But it also allows you to maintain tempo without having to block, because you can just keep attacking and then incorporate life gain into your hands, so you don't actually have to worry about getting your health to a total where you want to block. Because when you start blocking, this deck sucks at blocking. It doesn't want to block. So this comes in, depending on matchups. I have a 1 of CNC. It's CNC. I just kind of had a space open, and I was like, I want to have 1 popper in case I need it against Illusionist. It's good against Azalea. My problem with like the 2 for 6s is my blue count is relatively low, and I was really disliking having 2 of these in my hand. So by playing 1, I never had to ever worry about drawing 2 of them in one hand. So I have attack extenders, so second strikes for more aggressive matchups. So if I want to get wider and have more pressure, this card is really good. Kind of similarly, I have 2 Fry. So this is like, since I don't play Sizzle, this is just the Sizzle equivalent of not Sizzle. It's a starter. It's a 0 for 3, and I'm usually putting it in against matchups where I don't want to block anyway. So the being a 0 block doesn't really matter, and it just kind of always works better for me, especially in particular when I'm playing it alongside of 3 Exude Confidence. This is, I keep saying this, but this is also one of my favorite cards that I haven't been able to play for so long. So that's another reason why I wanted to play this deck, because I missed playing Exude. But I was finding with Sizzle lines, sometimes when you started with Exude, you would have to play the Sizzle prior to, and you're giving up information, in particular if you're playing against Kano, because I play this into Kano so that you have to ask them, do you want to pop off now or die? You'd have to break your chain to play Sizzle. Fry doesn't have that problem. You can still follow up with Fry after, even if you want to conceal further information in your hand after playing Exude. So those cards worked well together. I really liked Fry. I actually, after this, might consider going to 3 and seeing if I could find more space for it, but it just ended up never really being a detriment to me. Every time I had it in my hand, I was like, this is great. This feels good. I have an opener. I can just kind of be more comfortable with my hands, because I did end up with some like bricky hands sometimes. You just, the Rune Blade hands, you just draw all 4 attacks with no go again, and you're pitching 2 4 attacks to create a Rune Chant or something. So, and then I have Sigil of Suffering. This card's insane. People are playing Sinks, which I think are fair, but the ceiling of this card is just so high in this deck with CLV, where you're able to draw a card off of it. And a lot of decks, especially the ones that are trying to race into you, don't play AB. So you can really abuse the fact that you're always going to be able to convert an extra card, and this becomes a 0 for 5 most of the time. I would not remove it from 3. I really like it at 3, and I would not swap it for Sink Below. I'm just a huge fan of that card. And I think that if you're going to play Aurora, it's definitely something you should consider, because this deck also does really well sometimes just killing your opponent like a wizard, where you get them to 1, 2 life or something, and then they just die from Sigil of Suffering, or even shock. Like, I've killed so many people where they're at 1 and they pass, and I just shock them and they die. So Sigil kind of also adds onto your closing ability for the game. And then I have 3 Warmongers. It's hilarious how LSS made a card to counter Runeblade and then made a Runeblade that could easily play Warmongers. This is also another reason why I'm not playing more non-attack action cards, because I really believe in the power of Warmongers, and I don't want it to hurt me as much as it's hurting my opponent. And again, I was finding with Sizzle and Weave and stuff like that, I would play a Warmongers, and then I was more prone to drawing hands that just didn't allow me to interact well enough. So I wanted to really lean on the power of Warmongers, and also not be punished by it simultaneously. Because it's so impactful in the meta. I mean, as we saw today, Viserai won the event. This card really hurts Viserai. It really hurts Vincent, which is a matchup I've enjoyed playing with this deck, and a lot of people are playing. It's also really good into Azalea, as you saw today in my match that I played on stream. But yeah, Warmongers has just got a really strong place in the meta. And then everyone's favorite card, 2 Poison the Well. Even though I did lose to the CYD Verdance in top 8, obviously if I didn't have the Poison of the Well, it would have been even worse. He played really well. He got really ahead at the very beginning of the game, but Poison allowed me to leverage a lot of endgame decisions and give me some more. He was at least having to play around it. But I feel like right now, in the state of the meta, you just kind of have to lean into Poison to some degree. And this deck really converts Poison of the Well very seamlessly, because it does everything you want it to do. It's an instant. It's a blue. It easily slots in with some of your other instant cards, and it also interacts, ironically, with all your other cards that interact with instants, with Flittering and Gone in a Flash. So it fits in really well. I don't really know if I'd go up to 3. It's not really like a great card that you want to see, but you definitely want to have it. So I might try it out as we progress and see how much more impactful CYB ends up being, and especially like CYB Verdance and stuff. So yeah.
You want to run us through equipment or your other pieces?
I do, because equipment, I think, is where I differ a little bit from people too, which it's not like anything innovative, really. The equipment is just very standard. It's like Battle Runeblade, like classic Briar stuff. So obviously we have Aurora, we have our great tokens. Starfall is super awesome. I love this card. I just like Reaping Blade. If you're killing the people you want to play Reaping Blade into, their health's going to be lower than you. So it's like most of the time I didn't find that Reaping Blade was the most effective weapon into life gain decks, because I want to kill you. Headpiece, this is my main one, Crown. It's always been good since it's come out. I think it will always be good. It just helps you fix your hands. It helps against disruption, which Aurora is more prone to being hit by CNCs and Erase Face and stuff like that. Then I have Tunic. Tunic is just really good into the extended games. This can convert into like 6 to 8 damage sometimes by just using it to swing with Starfall. It also can help you curve out sometimes so that you can create embodiments of Lightning and Rune Chants. And especially because a lot of games are going longer now with the Earth Heroes and Enigma and things like that, I think Tunic has a really good place, specifically because of Lightning Greaves as well, which is the only feat I play I really love this card. It's just crazy that you have a battle worn card with AB and an insane effect, which is another reason why I'm playing the Sigil of Solace, is because of this card, and Tunic, because Tunic can really help you facilitate mini pop-off turns. I call it like the Wombo combo, where just out of nowhere you can just start going with Gone into Flashes and popping off. And so this card I really have leaned into and I really believe in, and that has altered a lot of my decisions with Sideboard and my equipment pieces in particular. Grasp is just, again, Grasp is awesome. It always has been. For Rune Blades, it's like the gold standard. There isn't really anything that competes with it at this point, in my opinion. Like, one of the best things that Grasp offers you is a filtering tool. So, you know, you end up with clunky hands, you end up with hands that are not always playable, and you're allowed to convert into the Grasp. Another interesting mini game that happens with Aurora is deciding what you want to do with your 2 extra resources. You can convert it into Embodiment of Lightning to get go again, or you can convert it into a Rune Chant to do damage. And a lot of times, the Rune Chant is quite a worthwhile investment, because if you have CLV up, the Rune Chant becomes very threatening, because now they're asking, do you want to block with an entire card of your hand to stop 1 arcane damage to prevent a draw, or do you want to just let it through? So Grasp is deceivingly quite powerful in the deck just because of the flexibility it offers you between these. I look at these as more like tools and options depending on how much I want to push in my turns, along with Arc Lightning working alongside of this, which is 100%. Hilarious. Like, that this also deals an extra arcane with Arc Lightning. So until there happens to be something better printed, I think this card is just going to be the standard. Extra battle equipment, I have Carapace. Again, it's a 2-block armor piece, which is insane. AB2, which offers you a lot of insulation against Kano and things like that. But I always tend to play this into the racing matchups. So when I'm playing like Viserai or the Mirror or any deck with more on-hits, I think this card is very valuable because it can allow you to cover up a Snatch or a Burn Up or Mauve Sky's on-hit trigger or something without having to give up cards from your hand. And again, this deck just like does not want to convert its hand into blocking because it sucks at blocking. You're trading off 2 block value for 4 attack. So anything that allows you to preserve your hand longer is quite valuable, which is why I'm also playing this card. A lot of people use this space for Face Purgatory. Like I had mentioned earlier, I just don't really want to build my deck around Face Purgatory, so this slots in really well. In particular against Brutes, this gives you a huge edge into the Brutes for racing. And I also play it in the Mirror. Because if people are playing the Aether Ironweave Crown of Dominion package, you usually always get your draw on those turns. But also, there are a lot of sequences where they go like E-Strike, draw a card with Go Again, and then hit with Channel Lightning Valley, and then they draw 2. And so you get to kind of extend beyond that. So this card still just offers a lot of advantage in racing matchups and against more aggressive decks that can output huge numbers. And then, yeah, the last equipment is just my spell fray, because I still respect Kano quite a bit. And this deck is maybe one of the few decks in a Fab history that I think actually does really well into Kano. I mean, you come in with AB3 and Spell Void 3, and you are also just threatening constant on hits at 0 for 4s, which Kano can't really block. And then you usually are threatening lethal by like turn 2 or 3 with 6 null rune avoidance essentially between the Spell Void and the AB. So I still respect Kano. The deck is very real, and I definitely do not want to be caught off guard by that deck because the people that play that deck are crazy good at the deck. So I still respect it. But yeah, that's my list. It's just I always kind of try to build for consistency and for tools that have multifaceted purpose. So depending on the matchup or depending on how I want to utilize them, I feel in control. And I feel like this equipment offers me that ability to be in control. And I think that a lot of my sideboard options also flex and give me that, that ability. So overall, my thoughts on the deck of Aurora, I think the hero is quite good. I don't think that she's like a high A level tier deck. I think she's probably low A, high B. I've always kind of still felt that way. She has a lot of great play into the field. But she does lack a certain level of pizzazz. Like, you do cool things, but you don't really do hyper unfair things like some other decks do, like, you know, CYB Verdance or Enigma or kind of other decks like that. So if you really enjoy the deck, which I do, it's a really fun deck to play, and you can really invest a lot of time and skill expression into the deck, which is what I enjoy. But I'm excited to see kind of what other people do, because so many people have vastly different takes on the deck, which is really cool to see. Because something you might not, you may have noticed is that I don't play Flicker Wisp. I really just like that card. I have tried it so many times because so many other people believe, and most of the time for me it ends up just being a 2 arcane damage spell, and it doesn't have lightning. It's a 2 block. It just kind of doesn't really flex with anything else in the deck other than Arc Lightning. And I really just like cards that are that specific, where it's like, if you play this card with this card, you win the lotto, but every other time, it's just a bad card. So that's kind of my perspective on it. That could always change, obviously, but at this point in time, I think I'm pretty good with not playing Flicker Wisp.
Well, dude, congratulations on the top 8
Thank you.
win, and thanks for breaking it down for us on Aurora.
You got it.